Welcome to Inside the History, and we're here live on the road on the USS Salem in Quincy, Massachusetts at the former Fore River Shipyard, where both Battleship Massachusetts and Destroyer Kennedy was built. I'm Thomas James Lowney, Gunner's Mate First Class, retired with Dr. John Scholes, and we're here to give you an inside history in both the USS Salem, naval history, and the Fore River Shipyard as well. So we can take you for a walking tour inside the gun turrets, through the magazines, through some of the control spaces, and give you an insight into the history of here at the Fore River Shipyard, where history has been made in Massachusetts and building some of the best ships in the world. And Salem being the last all-gun heavy cruiser built by the United States, and still the last all-gun heavy cruiser still in existence in the world. So, thank you for joining us. We're about to go on board. We'll see you there. We'll give you inside of the history. Thank you. Welcome back to Inside the History aboard the USS Salem inside Turret 2 here at Quincy, Mass. We're on what's projectile deck right now and board Turret 2, and we're going to go through the operations of how your projectiles get from the fixed stowage and into the gun hoist. All right, John, I'll let you go through the motions here, and we'll go into the operations.
All right. This drill projectile is being stored on a rotating projectile ring. There are actually 2 layers of projectiles here, and a total of 150 shells are located on this power-driven projectile ring. This projectile platform, or handling flat, is duplicated one deck above us with another identical projectile flat. So this particular ring supplies the 2 outer guns, the right and left guns, with 75 rounds each, and the projectile flat above us also supplies the right and left guns with 75 rounds each, for a total of 150 rounds per gun. You can see that the projectiles are secured with these chains and latches, and this entire structure, both where the projectiles are located and where I'm standing and the hoist is located, is continually rotating. But in addition to that, this projectile ring rotates independently while the turret is rotating, and it can rotate in either direction, clockwise or counterclockwise. Oftentimes what they would do is they would arrange the armor-piercing projectiles and the high-capacity projectiles such that the armor-piercing projectiles would be close to the hoist if it rotated in one direction, and the high-capacity projectiles would be close to the hoist if it rotated in the other direction. Now, how does the projectile get into the hoist? We're about to show you that. Normally, these would be transferred with this mechanism called a steady arm. This was added because this gun could be loaded with the ship rolling up to 20 degrees. With the weight of these projectiles up to 335 pounds, they wanted to make sure they were under complete control all the way from the ring to the hoist. There also, of course, are 2 hoists. So we don't want this hoist to move when somebody is doing something in the upper hoist. And there's actually an annunciator that, if you're using both hoists, will tell you whether or not you can load a projectile into this hoist, or whether somebody is doing something in the upper hoist and you cannot load yet. We're going to set it up to load only from the lower hoist, in which case this annunciator tells you to load. The steady arm is going to push the projectile into the hoist, and there's actually a trigger in the back, which, once the projectile is fully in, automatically raises the projectile to the next level, and finally continuously up to the gun. A total of 6 projectiles could be in the hoist and in the loading mechanism for the gun. This hoist was also used to bring ammunition down to load projectiles onto the ring. In that case, it would be run in reverse, and this device would be used to reach in, grab the projectile, and slide it out so it could be grabbed by the steady arm and pushed over onto the ring. Alternatively, if the ship was not rocking and rolling too much, some of the gunner's mates preferred to move the projectiles by the old-fashioned technique of parbuckling, basically taking the projectile and rotating it on its base and walking it. And if you develop enough skill, you can do that. You can be assisted in that case by wrapping a line around this gypsy head, which is, once you snub up the line, engages a clutch and will help pull the line and pull the projectile. This gypsy head can be connected to the steady arm mechanism to help move the weight of that projectile, because it is pretty heavy. Today we don't have the gypsy heads rotating, so we're going to have to rely on gunner's mate muscle power. Okay, now we're going to demonstrate the technique for loading a projectile into the projectile hoist from the rotating ring. This ring will have been rotated to bring the projectile into a position where it can easily be grabbed by the steady arm mechanism. The first step in loading is to unlatch the chains that secure the projectile. The steady arm mechanism is then moved in until it latches onto the projectile securely. It is then maneuvered back. This is necessary with a line on the until it is lined up in hoist, and then it is pushed with that lever into the hoist. And once it is fully into the hoist, it would go up automatically. To remove it and bring it back out, that tool would be used to slide it back out.
Okay, the shutter door is wired, so we can't close the shutter door because it would, once you press it in,
it would automatically snap shut.
it would snap and secure the projectile in the hoist. So it's wired up right now and secured, so we don't want to play with that. But to reverse the process, we walk over, latch the handle. All right, Mike, I'll reach in, walk her out. There you go.
Notice the sign says, "Do not place hands in hoist." That ring tool is there so that you do not have to risk your hands in moving the projectile out of the hoist.
Hold it.
Yep.
A little stiff. Clear.
And then the chains would be secured to last the projectile in place.
And you could double stack the projectiles so you would have 2 rows of projectiles here.
Exactly.
Because it'd be tight quarters. And as you can see, we're kind of fiddling with it right now because we're not an experienced gun crew. But the experienced gun crew, you know where not to put your hands, where to keep things moving, how to do it the most efficient way. Because with these dummies, this is what you drill. And the chief would run us, okay guys, get in there, make it happen. You see how to do it. You watch your fingers because these are not replaceable. So you want to keep them in your appendages and not get smacked around. And see how tight it is with a couple of big guys? You think you're moving at 360 pounds, was it?
335 pounds for the armor piercing.
335 pounds for an armor piercing. So you've got to do this, and you remember, you're firing 1 every 10 seconds?
1 every 6 seconds.
Every 6 seconds, excuse me, one every 6 seconds. So you got to imagine you've got 2 decks of people humping to get this stuff in, because it's what, 3 times faster than a 16-inch gun. So and it's an automatic system, so you have to train and get this down pat. Sometimes you use the par buckling or the strong back. I can see the advantages to both. Heavy weather, you want complete control. Anything over 25 degrees, you're going to be screaming at you, oh my God. And the par buckling, if you're sitting off Vietnam, calm seas, Pacific, just wheel it in. Par buckling is, once you get the hang of it, it's a simple thing and moves quickly. And with a good trained crew, and you're in tight quarters compared to a 16-inch gun. If you look back at the other video and look at the 16-inch compared to this, it's almost 3 times the size of this. And they're bigger, so you do require the room to move around, but it's a lot more user-friendly and not as tight. But similarities are very much the same. So that's pretty much on the projectiles, getting them in the hoist and then sending them up. And using the proper tools at the right time, keep your appendages. And also here we have fuse storages, so something that was not, if you wonder what these are for, these would be for your fuses. So that way you can set up your projectiles, your high capacities, so you keep them from being impacted. Because sometimes you would have VT, you would have point det, you would have time fuses, you would have a lot of different scenarios for these ammunitions, and that's what these racks are for here.
Yes, these guns could be used not only for shooting at ships, shore bombardment, but they could be used as anti-aircraft guns. And therefore, they would use proximity fuses in the 8-inch shell. And you have quite a range of effectiveness. It's about 150 feet that you could miss by with an 8-inch shell, and you'd still knock down an aircraft target.
Better than the 88s. So yeah, ordnance, it gave you a lot of flexibility with the ordnance. So as you can see with the help here of Mike, we've kind of give you a quick demonstration of the shell operations. And you remember, there are 3 hoists on each deck, 2 decks, and 2 person per. And then some operating and rotating the ammunition, because now you have to predetermine and lay out all the ammunition. And that's why you have like a pre-fire brief and what's going on ahead of time. But you never know. During general quarters, you come up on a surface contact or a air contact. Now you have to shift. You have to have that ability to be flexible, move, and know your systems and know your crew and what's available. So being a sailor inside here, a gunner's mate, a fire controlman, every specialty has a reason for being on board ship. You train, you operate to facilitate that quick operation, because in time of war, every second counts. So bravo Zulu to our sailors out there who are still doing it now, and to those who served during this time and operated the systems that we have. All right.
2 people on each hoist, a steady arm man and a par buckler. And there would also be a projectile ring operator who used this to rotate the projectile ring in both directions. He would also usually be the petty officer in charge, or the gunner's mate in charge. And so that would give you a crew basically of 7 men.
And a SOP hard phone operator too.
And there would usually be a talker.
Yep.
So that would be 8.
And you'd have your inner ring as well. So you have operations both on the outer and inner rings.
Ring.
So
all of this is happening continuously at the same time.
As the turret's moving. So it's quite the finesse of operations here, and to have skilled people to do it. So just some amazing stuff here. All right, John, I want to thank you for stepping up here and giving us a great in-depth insight into the operations here of the turret and the projectile decks and how they operate and how we go through the process. Very interesting, very fantastic to see, I think, being a gunner's mate and working in the systems, not having the opportunity to serve on a ship like this, you know, heavy cruiser with the guns, but it's fantastic, and the relationships between gun systems, you can see the progression, and it was fantastic. Thank you very much, sir. And I want a special thanks to the people here at the USS Salem, all the volunteers and coordination to make this happen so we can bring this bit of history to you. And we'd like you to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to come down and see and participate and hopefully volunteer, we look forward to talking with you and seeing you here. And we look forward, John, to the next segment, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much. Enjoy, take care, and we'll see you next time here on Inside the History. I'm Tom Lowney and Dr. John Scholes. Take care.